In an African village named Kijiji Shindi, life moves to the rhythm of nature. Fields of golden maize dance in the warm breeze, and ancient baobab trees stand tall like silent guardians. Children run barefoot through dusty paths, their laughter echoing through the hills. Women carry baskets of fruits on their heads, singing soft melodies, while elders gather under the shade of a large tree, sharing stories of ancestors and forgotten legends. Among the villagers, Makeda is known and loved. She isn't just admired for her stunning beauty. Her smooth, dark skin glows under the sun, and her eyes hold the warmth of the earth itself, but for her heart and wisdom. She carries the knowledge passed down from her late mother, a skilled herbalist who believed the land held a cure for every illness. Makeda spends her days wandering through the dense forests, collecting rare roots, leaves and flowers, blending them into powerful remedies. People say her hands hold the spirit of her mother, healing fevers, wounds, and broken bones alike. But Makeda's dreams stretch beyond her small hut. She envisions the house of healing, a sanctuary where women and children can come for medicine, comfort, and safety. A place where no woman must suffer in silence, where no child cries through the night with a fever, and where no one feels powerless again. She wants to build a future where her village thrives, not just survives. Every coin she earns from her remedies, she saves. Every prayer she whispers to the ancestors, she asks for strength. The villagers adore her, calling her the flower that heals. Yet, not every gaze upon her is filled with admiration. Among the crowd is Wekesa, the son of a wealthy trader. His eyes linger on Makeda, not with love, but with a dangerous, selfish desire. To him, Makeda is not a woman with dreams and strength. She's a prize he believes he deserves. And when Makeda dares to reject him, his pride will turn into something far more sinister. Wekesa was a man who walked through the village with his head held high, shoulders back, and a smug smirk that never seemed to leave his face. He was the only son of a powerful and wealthy trader, a man who brought silk, spices and jewelry from distant lands. Wekesa grew up knowing no hardship. He never heard the word no. From the time he was a boy, whatever he wanted was given to him: food, clothes, admiration, and attention. He believed the world owed him everything simply because of his name and his father's wealth. To Wekesa, people were just pieces on a board he controlled, and women were nothing more than prizes to be claimed. When he saw Makeda, he decided she would be his. Her beauty was undeniable, but it wasn't just that. There was something about her spirit, her strength, her independence, that made him want to possess her even more. Wekesa wasn't the kind of man who admired a woman's power. He wanted to own it, to break it, and keep it for himself. In his mind, Makeda was already his, whether she agreed or not. After all, who could refuse him? He was rich, handsome, and from a family that everyone respected. He couldn't imagine anyone, especially a woman, saying no to him. Wekesa didn't approach Makeda with honesty or affection. He came to her with gifts, fine fabrics dyed deep reds and rich blues, stitched with gold thread from distant lands. He brought a necklace carved from ivory, polished until it gleamed in the sun. Each time, he presented his offerings with a cocky smile, standing tall as if he were giving her the greatest treasures in the world. He expected her to swoon, to fall at his feet like so many other girls in the village. But Makeda was different. She wasn't impressed by silk, ivory, or gold. Her heart didn't beat for riches. It beat for her dreams. Dreams of healing, of helping, of building a place where women and children could find comfort and safety. When Wekesa held out his latest gift, a gleaming bracelet heavy with jewels, Makeda looked at him calmly. Her voice was soft but steady, her words like a quiet flame. "I am not a prize to be won, Wekesa. My heart belongs to my dreams, not to you." Her rejection cut through him deeper than any knife. For the first time in his life, someone had told him no, and not just anyone. Makeda, the woman he had convinced himself was his, had refused him, in front of the other villagers no less. He could feel their eyes on him, whispering. The humiliation burned hotter than the African sun on his back. His face tightened, his fists clenched at his sides, but he forced a smile. He nodded, pretending her words didn't matter, pretending he wasn't wounded. But inside him, something snapped. The rejection didn't just sting, it poisoned him. His pride, his ego, wouldn't let him walk away. Wakesa wasn't done with Makeda. Not yet. If she wouldn't give herself to him willingly, he would make sure she regretted ever saying no. The fire of his humiliation turned into something darker, more dangerous. He wasn't going to let her defy him and walk away untouched. In his mind, Makeda didn't belong to herself anymore. She belonged to him, and if he couldn't have her, no one else would either. The harvest festival was the most joyful time of the year in Kijiji Chao Shindi. The air buzzed with excitement, filled with the scent of roasted maize, sweet fruits, and sizzling meat. Women wore their brightest, most colourful fabrics, while children ran through the crowd, their faces painted with clay patterns. Drums echoed through the village, and dancers moved like the wind, twisting and spinning under the sun. Laughter, music, and cheer filled every corner of the village as people celebrated the blessings of the land. Wakesa stood at the edge of the festival, watching the crowd, but his eyes only followed one person, Makeda. She glowed in the sunlight, her dark skin shimmering, her smile brighter than the flames crackling in the fire pit. She laughed with her friends, her voice light and free, and it made his stomach twist. She hadn't spoken to him since she rejected his gifts, and the more she ignored him, the more his desire turned into obsession. Wakesa couldn't stand it anymore. He was done waiting. He didn't care if she didn't want him. He would force her to say yes. In his mind, she belonged to him, and today he would make sure the entire village knew it. He stepped forward, right into the center of the festival. The drums slowed, and eyes turned toward him, curious. He raised his arm high, and in his hand, a golden bracelet glinted under the sun. It wasn't just any bracelet. It was heavy, thick, and carved with intricate patterns, a gift only a man of great wealth could afford. He held it up like a trophy, his voice booming over the crowd. "Makeda!" he shouted, his voice dripping with confidence. "Marry me, and I will give you a life of luxury beyond this village. You will wear silk from faraway lands. You will eat only the finest foods. You will never know hardship again." The festival went quiet. The music stopped. Even the children stopped playing. All eyes turned to Makeda. The crowd waited, holding their breath, expecting her to say yes. After all, Wakesa was wealthy and handsome. No girl in the village would dare to refuse him. But Makeda didn't look impressed. She didn't blush, smile, or look down shyly like Wakesa expected. Instead, she stood tall, her head high, her eyes burning with quiet strength. The crowd parted as she stepped forward, her voice steady and clear enough to cut through the silence. "Wakesa," she said, her voice calm but powerful. "My heart cannot be bought. My dreams are worth more than gold." A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd. Women whispered to one another, shocked by her courage. Men shook their heads in disbelief. No one had ever dared to reject Wakesa, especially not in front of the entire village. Wakesa's face twisted, his confident smirk disappearing in an instant. His cheeks burned red with humiliation, his fists clenched at his sides, his nails digging into his palms. He had expected applause, cheering, admiration, but instead he stood there, exposed, rejected, and mocked. The whispers grew louder. Some people chuckled under their breath. Even the elders exchanged quiet glances, surprised by Makeda's boldness. She wasn't just beautiful, she was fearless. Wakesa's heart pounded in his chest, his pride crumbling into pieces. He had never felt this kind of shame before. His mind screamed that it wasn't over. He wouldn't let it end like this. As Makeda turned away, her head held high, Wakesa's eyes darkened. He didn't see her as a woman anymore. He saw her as the one who embarrassed him in front of everyone. His obsession boiled into anger. If he couldn't have her willingly, he would make her pay for this humiliation. No one said no to Wakesa and walked away untouched. The night was quiet, the moon hanging low over Kijiji Chao Shindi, casting silver light over the village. The celebration from the harvest festival had died down, and the village slept peacefully. The only sounds were the soft rustling of leaves and the distant call of a night bird. Makeda walked along the narrow path from the river, carrying a small clay pot of water. Her heart felt heavy, but her spirit stayed strong. Wakasa's public proposal still lingered in her mind, but she didn't regret her answer. She knew her worth. Her dreams were more valuable than any gold bracelet or promise of riches. The air was cool against her skin, and she welcomed the calmness of the night. But hidden in the shadows, Wekesa waited. His pride was shattered, his humiliation burning hotter than any fire. He couldn't stop hearing the whispers from the villagers, the laughter behind his back. Makeda had made him a fool, and in his twisted mind, she needed to pay. If he couldn't have her, no one else would. His heart wasn't filled with love anymore. It was filled with rage. In his hand, he held a clay pot, but this wasn't an ordinary pot of water or milk. It was filled with something far more dangerous, acid, stolen from the village blacksmith. He had heard the blacksmith talk about how the acid could eat through metal, how it burned flesh. Wekesa didn't care about the consequences anymore. He only cared about revenge. He watched Makeda draw closer, her figure graceful under the moonlight. His breathing was heavy, his heart pounding in his ears. He stepped out from the shadows, his voice a low, bitter whisper. "Let's see who loves you now." Before Makeda could react, before she could even process what was happening, he hurled the clay pot towards her. The pot shattered, and the liquid splashed across her skin. The pain was instant, a searing, unbearable fire that seemed to eat through her flesh. Her scream tore through the night, loud and heart-wrenching, echoing through the silent village. She collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony, her hands clutching her face, her skin burning. Her cries woke the village. Doors flew open, lanterns lit up, and people rushed toward the sound. Mothers grabbed their children, men grabbed sticks and spears, unsure of what danger had descended on their home. Wekesa stood frozen for a moment, watching his work. The beautiful Makeda, the woman who had dared to reject him, now lay on the ground, broken and burned. But instead of satisfaction, a sick, hollow feeling filled his chest. He hadn't destroyed her spirit. He had only proven his own cowardice. As footsteps approached, panic gripped him. He fled into the darkness, disappearing into the trees, leaving Makeda's screams behind him. Makeda woke to the faint smell of herbs and the sound of quiet whispers outside her hut. Her body ached, but the pain in her heart was far worse. Her skin felt tight and raw, a deep burning that refused to fade. Her mind raced, flashes of that terrible night flooding back, the sound of Wekesa's voice, the crash of the clay pot, the unbearable fire that followed. Her stomach twisted as the memory replayed over and over. She tried to move, but even the slightest shift sent pain shooting through her. Slowly, she raised a trembling hand to her face. Her fingers brushed against her skin, rough, uneven, nothing like the smooth, soft skin she once had. Her heart sank, her throat tightened. She didn't need a mirror to know the truth. She could feel it, the beautiful face that people admired, the face that made Wekesa want to claim her, was gone. Tears burned her eyes. She turned her head to the wall, unable to bear the thought of anyone seeing her like this. Outside, the village stirred. People spoke her name in hushed voices. Some cried for her. Others whispered about what had happened, their words laced with pity and sorrow. Children, who once laughed and ran to her for sweets and stories, now peeked from behind their mothers, afraid of what they might see. Makeda could hear it all. She heard the footsteps of her friends coming to check on her, the soft knock on her door, and the familiar voice of Amina, her closest friend, calling gently to her. "Makeda, please, let me in." But Makeda didn't answer. She couldn't. How could she let them see her like this? She wasn't Makeda anymore. Not the Makeda they loved. Not the Makeda who dreamed of building a house of healing. That Makeda was gone. Her voice came out in a broken whisper, barely loud enough for even herself to hear. "My face is ruined. My dreams are gone." Her words hung in the air, heavy with sorrow. She believed them. How could she help anyone? How could she stand tall and heal others when she couldn't even look at her own reflection? She stayed in her hut, day after day, refusing food, refusing visitors. The light from the small window felt cruel, reminding her of a life that seemed so far away. The world moved on without her, and she let it. She didn't believe she belonged to it anymore. The girl who once walked through the village with hope in her heart, who dreamed of a better future for everyone, that girl was gone, buried under pain, fear, and shame. And in her place was someone Makeda didn't recognize anymore. The village square was buzzing with whispers and quiet sorrow. The people of Kijiji Shindi had watched the once lively Makeda disappear into her hut, her laughter replaced by silence. Days turned into weeks, and the hut remained shut. The villagers missed her, not just her beauty, but the way she made their world feel brighter, safer. The woman who once healed their children, comforted their sick, and dreamed of a better tomorrow was now hidden away, lost in her pain. But Adisa, Makeda's closest friend, couldn't accept this. She had grown up beside Makeda, shared her secrets, her dreams, and her hopes. She knew the fire that burned in Makeda's heart, a fire that couldn't be put out, even by the cruelest of hands. She refused to let that fire die. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in fiery oranges and reds, Adisa climbed onto the wooden platform in the center of the square. Her voice, usually soft and gentle, rose strong and fierce over the crowd. Makeda's heart still beats. Her hands still heal. We will not let this cruelty define her, or us. Her words struck the crowd like lightning. People turned, listening intently. Wekesa tried to take her from us. He wanted to break her spirit, to make her feel worthless. But Makeda is more than her face. She is our healer, our sister, our friend. And she is still here. She still breathes. And as long as she does, we will not let her suffer alone. Her voice trembled with emotion, but her determination never wavered. We owe her more than our pity. We owe her our strength. She gave her life to care for us. It's time we give something back. If she can't come to us, then we will go to her. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a single voice called out, "Yes! Makeda is still one of us." Another voice followed, then another. The square erupted in cheers and chants. The people of Kijiji Ushindi, who had once watched in quiet sadness, now roared with support. Women raised their baskets, men beat their drums, children shouted Makeda's name. From her hut, Makeda stirred. The noise drifted through her window, wrapping around her like a warm blanket. She could hear their voices, calling for her. Her name, not in pity, but in love. Tears filled her eyes. For so long, she had believed she was nothing now, that her ruined face meant her dreams were dead. But the village didn't see her scars. They saw her, the woman who had once saved them, and who still mattered. For the first time in weeks, a flicker of hope touched Makeda's heart. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over Kijiji Ushindi. The villagers gathered beneath the ancient baobab tree, its thick branches stretching wide like the arms of an elder embracing them all. This tree had witnessed generations of decisions, celebrations, and justice. And today, it would witness judgment. Baba Themba, the oldest and most respected elder, stood tall despite his years. His eyes, clouded with age but sharp with wisdom, swept over the crowd. His voice, though calm, held the weight of a storm. Today, we speak not of Makeda's scars, but of the scar left on our village's soul. The crowd murmured, nodding. Makeda wasn't the only one who suffered. The cruelty done to her was a wound that cut through them all. Wekesa stood before the council, his shoulders tense, his jaw tight. He wasn't the proud, charming man they once knew. His face was twisted with bitterness, his eyes filled with defiance instead of remorse. "She humiliated me," he spat, his voice sharp with anger. "She deserved it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Women clutched their children closer. Men shook their heads in disgust. Adisa, standing near the front, felt her nails dig into her palms. Tears burned her eyes, not from sadness, but from rage. How could he still believe Makeda deserved this? How could he still feel justified after everything? The crowd began to swell with noise. Voices rose, some shouting, some cursing his name. "Monster!" one woman yelled. "Coward!" another voice called. "He's no man! He's an animal!" The noise grew louder, threatening to spiral out of control. But then, Baba Themba raised his hand. The crowd fell silent, his presence demanding respect. His voice, steady and deep, cut through the air like a blade. A man who destroys a woman's spirit is no man at all. The words hung heavy in the air. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to still, as if the earth itself was listening. Wekesa's face paled. He opened his mouth to protest, but no words came. His eyes darted around the crowd, searching for even a sliver of support. He found none. Not a single person looked at him with pity, only anger, only disappointment. Baba Themba stepped closer, his eyes locking with Wekesa's. You have brought shame to this village, to your family, and to yourself. Your hands do not build, they destroy. Your heart does not love, it hates. There is no place for you here. The elder's voice dropped lower, but somehow felt even heavier. Wekesa, you are banished from Kijiji cha Ushindi. You will leave this village today, and you will never return. The crowd erupted, not in anger, but in agreement. They shouted their approval, their voices rising to the sky. Wekesa staggered back, his face twisted in disbelief. His father, a wealthy trader who once stood tall with pride, now looked at his son with nothing but shame. Even his own family refused to meet his eyes. He was truly alone. Without another word, Wekesa turned and walked away. His steps were heavy, dragging through the dust. No one stopped him. No one looked back. As he disappeared over the horizon, the village seemed to breathe again. For the first time since the attack, the air felt lighter, as though the weight of his cruelty had been lifted from their shoulders. Baba Themba turned to the crowd, his voice softer now. Makeda will need us, and we will be there for her, always. The villagers nodded, their hearts united. Justice had been served, but their work wasn't over. They would rebuild together. The air felt different that morning, lighter, hopeful. The village had been quiet for weeks, waiting, hoping for a sign that Makeda would return to them. Inside her hut, Makeda sat in silence. She had been awake for hours, her mind racing. The weight of the past weeks pressed on her chest, but for the first time, it didn't feel as heavy. The voices of the villagers still echoed in her heart. The chants, the cheers, the love. They didn't hate her. They didn't pity her. They still believed in her, even when she couldn't believe in herself. Her trembling hand brushed over her face, feeling the rough, uneven scars. The pain wasn't physical. It was the fear of seeing their eyes, of watching people flinch when they looked at her. But she couldn't stay hidden forever. She wasn't the broken shell Wekesa tried to create. She was Makeda, healer, dreamer, fighter. With a deep breath she stood. Her legs felt shaky, but strong enough to hold her. She walked to the door, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, she froze. What if they stared? What if they saw her and only felt sorrow? Number, she couldn't think like that. She wasn't a victim. She pushed the door open. The light hit her first, warm and soft against her skin. Then the sound, voices, movement, life. The villagers were gathered in the square, talking and working. Someone gasped. Heads turned. The square fell into silence, one by one, as they realized she was standing there. Makeda stepped out. Her back was straight, her head high. Her face, once smooth and radiant, was now marked by jagged scars, a cruel reminder of Wekesa's rage. But her eyes, her spirit, burned brighter than ever. The silence stretched, thick and uncertain. Then Adisa broke through the crowd, tears in her eyes and a smile on her lips. Others followed, moving closer, their faces filled not with pity, but with love, relief, and admiration. Makeda's voice, though quiet at first, rang clear and steady through the square. My scars tell a story, not of pain, but of survival. I will not hide any more. Her words seemed to hang in the air, powerful and unshakable. The crowd watched her, eyes wide, hearts pounding. Then one by one they began to cheer. It wasn't just applause. It was a roar of triumph, of unity. They weren't celebrating her beauty. They were celebrating her strength. Women pushed forward, some crying, some smiling. Children, who once feared what she might look like, ran to her, hugging her legs. The men nodded in respect. Baba Themba stood among them, his eyes filled with pride. Makeda felt her heart swell. She wasn't just Makeda with the scars. She was Makeda, the healer, the survivor, the dreamer who refused to die. And this time, when she looked at her village, She didn't see fear or pity. She saw home. The air felt different that morning, lighter, hopeful. The village had been quiet for weeks, waiting, hoping for a sign that Makeda would return to them. Inside her hut, Makeda sat in silence. She had been awake for hours, her mind racing. The weight of the past weeks pressed on her chest, but for the first time, it didn't feel as heavy. The voices of the villagers still echoed in her heart. The chants, the cheers, the love. They didn't hate her. They didn't pity her. They still believed in her, even when she couldn't believe in herself. Her trembling hand brushed over her face, feeling the rough, uneven scars. The pain wasn't physical. It was the fear of seeing their eyes, of watching people flinch when they looked at her. But she couldn't stay hidden forever. She wasn't the broken shell Wakiza tried to create. She was Makeda, healer, dreamer, fighter. With a deep breath she stood. Her legs felt shaky, but strong enough to hold her. She walked to the door, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, she froze. What if they stared? What if they saw her and only felt sorrow? Number, she couldn't think like that. She wasn't a victim. She pushed the door open. The light hit her first, warm and soft against her skin. Then the sound, voices, movement, life. The villagers were gathered in the square, talking and working. Someone gasped. Heads turned. The square fell into silence, one by one, as they realized she was standing there. Makeda stepped out. Her back was straight, her head high. Her face, once smooth and radiant, was now marked by jagged scars, a cruel reminder of Wikesa's rage. But her eyes, her spirit, burned brighter than ever. The silence stretched, thick and uncertain. Then Adisa broke through the crowd, tears in her eyes and a smile on her lips. Others followed, moving closer, their faces filled not with pity, but with love, relief, and admiration. Makeda's voice, though quiet at first, rang clear and steady through the square. My scars tell a story, not of pain, but of survival. I will not hide any more. Her words seemed to hang in the air, powerful and unshakable. The crowd watched her, eyes wide, hearts pounding. Then one by one they began to cheer. It wasn't just applause. It was a roar of triumph, of unity. They weren't celebrating her beauty. They were celebrating her strength. Women pushed forward, some crying, some smiling. Children, who once feared what she might look like, ran to her, hugging her legs. The men nodded in respect. Baba Themba stood among them, his eyes filled with pride. Makeda felt her heart swell. She wasn't just Makeda with the scars. She was Makeda, the healer, the survivor, the dreamer who refused to die. And this time, when she looked at her village, she didn't see fear or pity. She saw home. The village, now thriving and full of life, buzzed with laughter and chatter. Children ran through the dusty paths, their giggles echoing between the huts. Women gathered outside the house of healing, exchanging stories and preparing herbs under Makeda's guidance. Life had found a new rhythm, one of hope, strength, and unity. Then came a sound no one expected. A figure stumbled into the village, his clothes torn and dirty, his once proud posture now hunched and broken. His skin, once smooth and glowing with arrogance, was now sunburnt and gaunt. His feet dragged in the dust, and his eyes, once filled with entitlement, now held only desperation. It was Wekesa. The villagers froze, whispers rippling through the crowd like a wave. His name passed from one mouth to another, disbelief and anger rising in their voices. Wekesa collapsed to his knees in the village square, right beneath the old baobab tree, where his fate had been sealed. His voice trembled, barely more than a broken whisper. Please, Makeda, I'm sorry. I've lost everything. His words hung in the air, fragile and pitiful. The man who once believed he owned the world now looked smaller than ever. His eyes searched the crowd, but no one stepped forward. The people who once admired him now only looked on with cold, hardened expression. Makeda emerged from her hut, her steps slow and steady. She no longer moved with the quiet shyness of the girl she once was. Each stride carried the weight of a woman who had survived the worst and risen stronger. Her face, though marked with scars, glowed with an inner light that no one could steal from her. The crowd parted for her, heads turning to watch. Wekesa's eyes locked onto hers, hope flickering in his gaze. Makeda, please, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I've lost everything. My family, my home, my pride. I have nothing. Please forgive me. For a moment, the village held its breath. Even the wind seemed to still. Makeda stared at him, her eyes unreadable. The woman who stood before him wasn't the same girl he once tried to control. She wasn't the victim he thought he had destroyed. Her voice, when it came, was soft but unwavering, like the calm before a storm. I forgive you, Wekesa, she said slowly. The crowd murmured in surprise, but then her voice grew stronger, louder, carrying across the square. I forgive you, but I will never forget what you tried to take from me. The crowd erupted. Cheers and shouts filled the air, not for Wekesa, but for Makeda. They called her name, their voices rising like a song. The sound shook the very earth beneath their feet. Wekesa looked at her one last time, his face crumpling with the weight of his own shame. He didn't argue. He didn't beg again. He simply bowed his head and disappeared into the dust, his figure fading into the horizon. That night, the village gathered under the stars. Baba Themba stood among them, his voice ringing with pride as he addressed the people. This is no longer Kijiji cha Ushindi, he declared, his eyes shining. This is the village of the Phoenix, a place where we rise from the ashes, stronger than before, a place where no one's spirit can be broken. The villagers cheered, louder than ever before. The sound carried through the hills, into the trees, and beyond the mountain. It wasn't just a celebration of Makeda's strength, it was a celebration of their own. And as the fire crackled and the stars shone brighter than ever, Makeda stood quietly at the edge of the crowd. She looked out at her people, her family, her home. They tried to steal her light, but Makeda became a flame that no one could extinguish.